Hello and welcome. Today I will take you through the experiment of facilitating a one-time support group for health practitioners. This is aimed at making us get to know how group leadership works and how we can engage a group operational strategies and analysis of ourselves. I will show the outline of the meeting. I will access my leadership strategies and tell how the process has influenced my knowledge of productive facilitation of a group. On June 14, 2025 at 4 p.m., I had a meeting. It was 90 minutes. During this meeting, there was various activities that occurred. It was held in a local community hall and consisted of 7 participants. This theme was on how to handle emotional exhaustion and burnout in a healthcare setting. Although some participants were previously involved in professional relationships with me, I explained that this program was not an evaluation and that everything discussed was confidential. The evaluation will help me not only discuss the flow of the session, but also discuss the interpersonal dynamics, my leadership decisions, and the lessons that I will use in practice in the future. The intended group discussion was focused on the emotional exhaustion and burnout among medical workers. This is based on the high rise levels of stress in the healthcare sectors, especially in post pandemic era. I had a desire to create an environment where peers could be free to express themselves and feel accepted. We met in a community hall, a comfortable and quiet place that guaranteed privacy. I selected 7 people to work with who worked in different departments of the hospital, such as radiology, nursing, and administration. They were all adults, and their participation was not mandatory. The session took about 90 minutes, and it was held between 4 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. One of the participants who was on the initial list had to be pulled at the last minute, but another worker who heard about the group showed interest and participated. 2 of the participants were the people with whom I had professional relationships beforehand, and my relationship with them necessitated the need to communicate effectively on boundaries and confidentiality. It was aimed at remaining objective and non judgmental. I communicated the meeting through via email and word of mouth. It explained to the participants that this was a one time confidential support session to discuss the common issues and coping methods for stress and emotional exhaustion at work. I will now go on to explain the pre group planning and initial planning. An element of participation was a key dynamic of the success of this group. The first step I did was create a session plan, the goals of which were obvious, that is, to enable the participants to relax, share the feelings of burnout, and finding coping strategies and some sense of mutual understanding and support. I then decided to use tools and techniques according to Jacobs et al. 2002, which emphasized group participation and emotional safety. Choosing a group introduction to start sharing without being very intrusive was one of my priorities. I have chosen the activity where everyone uses a quick recap of the day as an icebreaker and they explain their emotional conditions using a single word. I also printed out a tool called the coping ladder, where the ladder is able as you can see right here, chosen processes tool and the icebreakers, relevant expectations and norms, communicated norms and expectations. The latter is able to visually represent the unhealthy and coping options. Pre-session communication featured a description of the objectives of the session, confidentiality, and how to participate. These pre-group communications played a critical role in establishing the mode and controlling anxiety that the members of the group new to sharing would experience. The norms were including respect for different options, time sharing, and confidentiality were highlighted both in writing and in the start of the meeting. I tried to find a balance between the structure and the flexibility and planning so that the personal expressions is deep and at the same time the process is the same. I then went on to move on. First of all, the group was provided with a short welcome and explanation of what to expect. I began by reminding our norms and confidential and mutual respect as well as equal voice. I kept stressing that no one was forced to participate, but there was no bars and anyone could pass in case he or she was not comfortable. As an icebreaker, I ran exercises such as narrating the day's event. Every participant had one word to describe his or her emotional positions. The emotional tone is set using words such as worn out, nerves, and hope. This very simple yet powerful practice enabled the participants to start relating to their inner condition and with one another. This was followed by a gentle check-in in which members provided more details about what they said in the case that they felt like. This process began with the creation of emotional safety, according to Yalam and Lezes. State that group cohesion is based on trust. I wanted to model vulnerability by holding up my word and experience, and this helped to encourage them to be more open. The introduction preconditioned the genuine care and disclosure, creating a foundation for more open sharing throughout the session. After the icebreaker, the group moved to the content of the lesson itself, the initial one, the stress snapshot cards. Encourage the participants to reflect on one recent stressful experience at work and the way they dealt with it. This task resulted in introspective expression. A number of the participants cited generic issues such as large patient load, evening/night duty, and challenging cases in emotional cases. I promoted dialogue with one question and the connection of similar experience. This sustained the feeling of universal versatility, one of the therapeutic factors. The second exercise was the coping ladder, where individuals would note the coping strategies they were applying at present and the ones they wish to apply. This exercise gave them visual and therefore interesting, but also enable understanding of self-development. The dynamic of the group progressed positively. Some members were reserved at the beginning, although with time and when the emotional safety get emphasized, more members spoke up. At this point, when we shifted to the coping ladder, each of the 7 members had already talked. The emotional level of the session emerged as such. A member of a group talked about the sadness of losing a long-term patient, and this promoted a time of shared experience where the others nodded their head and gave a few words of affirmation. I employed the linking techniques to stress the experiences that they had in common, like the sense of guilt, hopelessness, and exhaustion. And this made people realize that they were not the only ones going through this. Jacobs et al. 2002 state that these connections are the most important to achieve effective group process. One of the complications that I managed was a participation who started to persuade the discussion in the direction of workplace politics. I used a cutting off technique with a slight touch to help shift the emphasis of the discussion back to the individual experience instead of like institutional critique. This direction by the group was very well coordinated and the member re-engaged well. In general, relationship was demonstrated by respect, affirmation, and true caring. This population proved that one session, when well facilitated, has the potential to be healing and very insight. I then went on to explain leadership self-evaluation, the strengths that relate to active listening and emotional validation, areas that need improvement such as time pacing, encouraging quieter voices, and even effective strategies applied such as clarifying and summarizing links. I then did a reflection um, and asked the participants to give feedback at the close of the session. The freedom to be heard was appreciated by many group members. One participant noted, "I didn't realize how much I needed this as I began to talk." Some other people supported it and said how nice it was to know that they were not alone. These unexpected affirmations strengthened the worth of the session. Some of them asked that we make the group a regular one, and I am already discussing with the administrations about making this a monthly wellness circle. To make it more effective, one positive feedback involving adding additional time to one-on-one small breakout discussions. Although we did not have much time, this feedback allowed me to understand the value of the small group sharing in a large session. Yalam and Lesbos 2020 reported that these type of formats may lead to intimacy and deep processing. I appreciate that the feedback was sincere and it not only confirmed the effective session but also gave constructive thoughts as to how it could be improved. This encounter had enhanced by appreciation of group process and collective support. In the future, I will consider more feedback strategies and see how the structure can be changed to fit the groups of the need. This is also future changes. Vulnerability is promoted by trust and structure. Reflectiveness can be improved through silence. Future objective monthly health and wellness groups. This has shown me that vulnerability is not about falling in group, but rather is exposed within setup.